Hey everybody, thanks for joining me. Pastor Scott again from Oak Ridge Community Church with another edition of Life Minutes. In this video and the next video, we are going to talk about the election. It will have already occurred by the time you watch this, but I've got some food for thought in these next two videos that I'd like to share with you. In this one, I want to deal with this topic. How should we respond if our person lost the election? The person you voted for didn't win. What should you do now? How should we respond? Well, I think there are a few places in Scripture that give us guidance. So let me share with you just 4 thoughts on how we should respond, even if the person we wanted to win the election did not. First, believe it or not, whoever did win, we are to pray for them. In 1 Timothy 2, Paul said that we are to pray for those in leadership over us. And he used the word kings and speaking of the political rulers. And keep in mind that the person ruling Rome at this time was Nero. Nero was a horrible, crazy, perverted emperor. So maybe you're thinking how bad it is in America because your guy didn't win. Well, think of the early Christians. In fact, Nero would launch an incredibly horrible persecution against the church. And yet Paul says, pray for them. Pray for their salvation. Just pray for them. So we need to pray for whoever was elected. Second, be steady in our faith. Peter says in 1 Peter 2:13 through 17 that we're to stay the course and be consistent in our walk for God. There are people, and you've already encountered them, who do not hold to the same moral, ethical, and social viewpoints that we do. And they will sometimes bring up lies and say lies about us, bring up false statements to other people about us as Christians. You and I simply need to stay the course, be steady in our faith. My faith is not based on whether my person won the election or not. My faith is based on the fact that I have a sovereign, all-powerful God who is still seated on the throne of heaven. So we're to pray for the elected officials. We're to be steady in our faith. The third thing is that we may have to, again, and this could happen anywhere in the world and does, we may have to say no if we're asked to do something that is contrary to our faith. Daniel and his friends are perfect examples of standing for truth when they were commanded to disobey God. In Daniel 3, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are told that they are to bow down to a false idol. They refused to do that. They only worship one God, and so they were willing to say no when something went against their faith. In Daniel 6, Daniel continued to pray to his God, though he was commanded not to, as was the rest of the empire at that time. Point of it is that we have to put Christ, we ought to obey God rather than men, but we need to make sure that in our saying no, it is focused on what Scripture says. We're not just simply saying no because it's inconvenient for us. We're saying no if someone tells us we can't preach, we can't pray, and I'll get in trouble maybe for this, but that we can't gather, on and on. So we need to be willing to say no, all right? A fourth, remember this, God is in control, and regardless of who won the election, we are on the winning team. This keeps us moving forward. The Lord uses this to empower us and stand up when necessary. I believe that, as Jesus said, he will build his church. God is not done with any of us who are his followers. He wants to use us to be difference makers. So those are some thoughts on if your person lost the election and you're worried about what the future may hold. Just consider those 4 points. I'll talk to you next week about how should we respond if our person won the election. Thanks for tuning in.